So this is going to be the last video of 2023. I wasn't sure if I was even going to make it because I'm not even sure if somebody's going to find this interesting. But what I will do is I'm going to reflect on 2023. This is kind of like a video diary / journal, I guess, for myself. And also because I do want to put out one more video just to kind of be consistent with the output here. But you know what? You might actually find it interesting. I know for content that I do watch, non-real estate related, I do want to see from the creators more about behind the scenes, how they think about things, just things like that. So 2023 being the perfect example, this was the year where a lot of real estate agents got humbled. This is where you got punched in the face because whatever used to work in the past no longer works, and you really have to work for every single deal. And there's a lot that has changed in this market. So let's talk about 2023 from my perspective. So for me, 2023, it started off incredible. I mean, I was on track to have my best year probably to date. And what happened is right around May and June of this year, I got punched in the face, like straight uppercut, sucker punch, or whatever. I got laid out, meaning I had listings coming up. I had invested a ton into these listings, and then nothing was selling. We couldn't hit the numbers we were hoping to. There was just literally demand disappeared. We can speculate as to the reason for that. There's no point. It's just, I think buyer sentiment changed completely. And we had a very aggressive start to the year as well. Prices between January and May of 2023 went up 16%. Typically, in a normal year, they go up about 8% in those 5 months. That's based on seasonal trends. So going into the summer, things changed completely. And here I am basically going on market with certain listings where I've invested thousands of dollars that I'm now not going to get back because we're not going to be able to sell these properties for the amount I originally thought we would be able to based on the market that we had. So that's where I started taking some hits, and I started getting humbled because I realized that things are changing, and they changed very fast. Now, I have no issue with this. And by the way, this is not me complaining. This is just me thinking out loud and thinking on my feet. What ultimately happened is I had to really stick my neck out in a few different ways during this change in market, where it made for some very stressful situations, but there was a lot of internal growth that happened. So I'll give you two examples where it really put me to the test in terms of just myself as a realtor and the confidence I have in my own abilities. So example number one, I had a listing. Let's just say this listing was worth $1 million. What ended up happening in the summer is you would start getting a lot of low balls. Now, this is normal. Obviously, we're going into a buyer's market, so we're getting low balled on this $1 million listing. People would come in with like $850,000 offers with conditions, which is fine. I have no issues with that. But everything suggested that this property was worth $1 million. Now, I have no issue with people lowballing, and in fact, you need some lowballing to kind of keep everybody on their toes. What ends up happening is, first, some people lowball so low that they're actually not doing themselves any favors, and they're effectively disqualifying themselves from actually getting the listing. Like with lowballs, there's a tactful way of doing it. Typically, what I tell people is you cannot lowball. If now the caveat here is if a listing is priced correctly. So let's say all comps, everything suggests this place is worth $1 million. You're not going to get it for $800,000. It's just not going to happen, especially if it's turnkey, ready to go. Unless it's some sort of a property with that's a full gut job. It has a stop work order from the city. There's no permits, all the stuff. Power's been shut off. Sure, on properties like that, go ahead, lowball. Go even 75% of asking, no problem. But for normal properties, you're generally not going to get, not generally, you're not going to get 20% discount in a short amount of time. Prices on the way down, despite the buyer's market crash, whatever, they're very slow on the way down. So for you to get something for 20% below market value at the time, it will take time. Maybe it will take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, but it's not going to happen 2 weeks of a listing coming on and you coming in at 20% below asking. But anyway, that's just a rant on the side. Continue to lowball, just do it tactfully. Maybe come in at 10 and understand that even then you're going to have to work your way up. But what happened with this particular listing is that, so I knew the people's financial situation here, the sellers. I knew I had a great listing. I had walked every single property that was for sale within a kilometer of our listing. I knew every single comp in and out. And I knew with this particular property, with the work that was done, we were one of the best, if not the best offerings on the market. I also knew through our internal sources that I was getting the most amount of showings. I was getting the most amount of offers relative to the competing listings. So this went on for about a month. We weren't getting what we thought we would get, and the sellers are obviously getting fatigued. And one of the sellers was basically deciding to throw in the hat and basically, you know what, let's just take the first reasonable low ball and cut our losses and move on. And this is where the way I like to think of things, if these people were my parents or it was my family, would I be okay with them doing that? And or if it was even my own property, would I be okay with that? And the answer to that is no. I would not be okay for you to leave $100,000 on the table just because we're in a buyer's market and we're not getting good offers. I think you have to hold out in certain situations, especially if you have the means to do so. Hold out and wait for that right offer. And it's a very tricky situation because for me, obviously, the easiest thing is like, you know what, sell it. You know, we'll sell at a loss. Who cares? I get paid. You move on, this and that. But it just internally, it doesn't sit well with me because, like I said, I always ask my question: if it was my parents or my family or my own house, would I be okay with that end result and that price? I don't want to be the listing agent on a property that sold for that was effectively stolen. So I had to push back on them and say, no, we just don't do that. Just trust me. Wait, we're going to get the right buyer. We're going to get the right offer. And mind you, we were getting offers. I know people were interested in the house, but it just, we didn't have the right buyer that, you know, was willing to pay what the property was worth at the time. And I stuck to my opinion of the value. We did a very thorough home evaluation. I knew what this place was worth. I was confident in my number of, let's say, $1 million, 950 to $1 million. And I stuck to it. And obviously, I'm putting my neck out on the line here because what if 3 months go by and nothing happens? So we had a conversation with the sellers, and I told them where I'm at, and I discouraged them from taking low balls, and I said, just hang on, just wait. You have the means to wait. I know it's tough, it's stressful. Sure enough, within I think 45 days, we were able to get our number. We sold and we moved on. But um, I have to tell you, that was a very difficult time for me personally because obviously you're impacting somebody's life and you're advising somebody with one of their biggest assets. So it can be very stressful. For me, at least, I felt the stress. I'm very happy that it worked out, but it was stressful. But I had to stick to what I believed in, and thankfully it worked out. Now, the other thing that was a very big learning is the good old days of taking a for sale sign and putting it on somebody's front lawn with your mug on it and then putting a listing on MLS and thinking that's what's going to sell a house. Those days are over. And this is, I think, the biggest equalizer right now, where the old way of doing business and what's worked for many people and for those not willing to adapt, this is where there's going to be just a shift in dynamic and market share because those old ways no longer work, at least for now, while we're in what I believe is a buyer's market. And I was in this position where, you know, things weren't moving. How do you drive traffic to your listings? How do you get people in the door? How do you get in front of buyers that may not be active but would potentially act and transact on your listing if they saw it? And this is where, for the last 2 years, I've really invested a lot of time and money in paid targeted ads. And I've learned from some of the best in this country that run these paid targeted ads. And this is done through Facebook, Instagram, and Google. And what I was able to prove to myself is that this is probably the way of the future, especially when it comes to listings. Now, I know agents in general will pride themselves in, hey, I have a big social media following. I'll put it up on my Instagram or whatever, and you know that's going to help with the visibility of your listing. And to a degree, that's correct. That will help with the visibility, but I don't necessarily think that translates to a sale. Paid targeted ads, however, in my opinion, absolutely translate into a sale. And I'll give you 2 examples of this that happened this year. And here's what I mean. A lot of people are under the impression that you don't even need to do any marketing on a property because once you put something up on the MLS, that's it, right? Like everybody's on MLS or House Sigma, and this is how you find properties. And that is true for active buyers with urgency. So that probably captures 40% of your total market of people that are willing to transact. There's an entire different market of people that if they saw the right property, they would move on it. So these are people that are on and off. They've looked here, but they kind of gave up. They couldn't find the right thing. So they're not really on MLS. The prospect search or with the notifications that their agent set them up on, that probably expired. So they're not actively looking, but then something pops up because I was able to tag them or geotag them specifically in their area, because I know this is specifically what they might have been looking at. If they saw that, if they saw the right listing at the right time while they're sitting on their couch, not looking for real estate, just popped up, how likely do you think they are to come to an open house and potentially that could lead into an offer? Well, I can tell you anecdotally, that is very likely. So the people on MLS are the ones with the urgent need to transact, but then there's this entire pool of buyers that are out there that will transact if you spoon feed them the information. And this is where paid targeted ads have been incredible for me in terms of having a good hook ad, how not just posting something on Facebook and just throwing it up and boosting a post, getting in front of the right people in the right places at the right time consistently, and then retargeting those same people with different content, again, to drive them to come into your listed property. And this has been basically the biggest learning for me, because this is probably the way of the future, where MLS may not be sufficient. I've been able to drive massive amounts of traffic to my own listings. It doesn't work for every single listing, but it does work for quite a bit of listings. And this is where you're spending a lot of money. And again, this is where you're spending money where you may not see that money if the property doesn't sell. So big risks, but again, it moves the needle on your transactions. Aside from that, I'm going to try to be a little bit more consistent, especially on YouTube and TikTok. I'm starting to see that this is paying off. A lot of you reach out to me from YouTube and TikTok. I've met a lot of you. I've actually done deals with a bunch of you as well. It's interesting just comparing platforms. I think YouTube and TikTok are probably the two best platforms. And I think these are also great platforms for you, the end consumer that's looking for an agent, because there's so many of us with these YouTube channels and TikTok pages where you can watch our content and see whether or not we vibe and if it works. Because finding real estate agents or finding the right agent for you, I can see it as an end consumer, that is a very difficult thing to do, because unless you have somebody in your immediate family that you like, trust, and you're willing to work with them, like, where do you go to find an agent? There's just so many of them. Do you pick somebody off a garbage can, somebody off a bus, somebody off Instagram? I don't know. It's very difficult. And I think from a social media perspective, if I was to be looking for an agent, I would be looking at the ones on YouTube and TikTok in particular. I know TikTok has a reputation that it's for kids, but really it's not. Don't fall into that trap. There are a lot of great people on there. The reason I like those is because you actually have the chance to interview these people, see their mannerisms, see how they approach things, how they talk, what their views are like, and if they align with yours. And from there, it just makes it that much easier for you and for the agent when it comes to working together. Those are my thoughts. This is why I think I'm going to continue, pushing more content out and trying to be more consistent. But obviously, I have to balance that with real work, real clients that are happening. Sometimes I cannot post content because content is actually difficult to make. I find that surprisingly challenging. But to make a 10-minute video, it could take 4 hours between coming up with the content, the script, not even a script, but the talking points, the media, whatever material I'm going to try to add. So it's challenging, and YouTube is probably one of the hard. Not it's not one of it is the hardest platform to grow on because it's the competition is stiff, but it's just very difficult to attract views, especially when you compare it to something like TikTok, where stuff is more organic, it's faster, and you can get in front of more people much quicker. So that being said, that's the wrap up for 2023 for me. Very challenging, but you know what? I do appreciate the challenge because I think it has pushed me and my business to really start thinking outside the box of how we do business, how we approach things, how we negotiate with other agents, how we negotiate with our own sellers, our own buyers, just our own clients in general. Things are very fluid, but I think it keeps it interesting. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.